Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Office Bloke Daz.
I'm Office Bloke Aidan.
Here we are, Office Bloke Daz Sports Edition. You know, we've been talking of late about certain teams to follow for you.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of teams that I follow in, like baseball, because when I lived in the USA, it was like I had to find teams to sort of like follow because there was no European sports on the TV as fluid as what these today.
Yeah.
So I had to find something that was teams to follow so I could get into it. But obviously now we're looking for a baseball team for you, college football team for you.
Very true.
Yeah, so you've got your NBA team pretty much.
Yeah.
And you've got your NFL team.
Yeah,
so,
and my
hockey
team.
Yeah. So you're literally insane for cheering for these cursed teams.
Is that like, do you actually think that's a thing though, or is it just all coincidences or like?
Well, I remember when I lived in the USA, there was a curse, something to do with Boston had a curse. And I can't remember what the curse was, but they'll probably mention it on here, or if they don't, someone will mention it in the comments what the curse was with Boston. I don't know if it was like a Babe Ruth curse or something like that. But
you do hear about like stories, stuff like even in football.
Yeah.
It's like 100 years ago, some Benfica manager who got sacked said that he put a curse on the club saying they won't win the European Cup for 100 years. And it's been like 70 years now.
Well, I could say that about Charlton Athletic.
Yeah, that's what.
Something like that. You know what I mean?
But Benfica actually won the European Cup.
Yeah.
And then when they won it, he's like, you won't win it for another 100 years.
Well, maybe. But let's see what these are.
I don't really.
You're literally insane for cheering for these cursed teams.
Yeah.
Many of the greatest stories in sports have come from breaking decades-long curses, but there are some professional franchises that, if you're a real diehard, will take years off your life. They keep coming up with new ways to rip your heart out. They're mired in controversy, and they trade away your favorite players. And meanwhile, hated rivals, pompous expansion teams, and those lightning-in-a-bottle lucky sons of b****s have a taste of what you've craved for decades. Are you a fan of a team like this? As someone in the same boat, I've wondered what you have. How do we keep choosing to support these teams? How come those other fans that have it oh so good not had to suffer like us? Why can't we just win it all once before we're wiped off this earth? Cheering for these teams, only to experience the same result year after year, has driven us to the point of literal insanity. These are the most cursed teams in sports today.
Just before we get started, we kind of supported a cursed team. Man City was supposedly cursed in Europe.
Well, we had that as well, but when I was growing up as a kid, we'd not won anything. My only thing we won in 1976, but I wasn't old enough to really realise, although I went to the game.
Yeah,
but my dad wouldn't let me in, so my mum had to push me around in a pram around the stadium.
Yeah, I'd say, but then that's different. That's not being cursed when you're just quite shit.
No. Well, that's it. We were cursed. We were proper shit because we were cursed to go from the Premier League to the First Division to the Second Division.
Yeah,
so
true.
You never witnessed all
but
this.
But it's one of them where like when you're like supposedly the best team in the competition and you
still can't win it.
You don't win it every year after year.
That's just cup competition. That's just not. There's no curse based on that. It's just.
I don't think it's an actual curse.
No, a lot of things have to fall into place.
We broke the curse anyway. If there was one
anyway. Yeah.
Let's get into it.
Who do you think's going to be on here? Any teams in particular? Cleveland Browns.
Cleveland Browns. That's what I was thinking. Or maybe I'm not too sure, to be fair.
No, let's
I'm
see.
Not really sure.
Yeah.
Before we dive into our teams, let's first define what a sports curse is. It can take on a variety of forms, from inexplicable blunders to career-ending injuries, to controversies and scandals, and much more. But most importantly, a true curse strings together a multitude of mishaps over the course of several decades to doom an entire fanbase. We're focusing on the 4 major pro leagues in North America, so NBA, NFL, MLB, and NHL. For each league, I'll briefly make a case for 2 runners-up, and then we'll dive into the most cursed teams in that league. To me, this is the hardest league to narrow down to just 3 finalists. 10 of the NBA's 30 teams have yet to win a finals, and 5 of those 10 have yet to even appear in one. But let's start with a franchise that, while it has a title, has brought fans nearly 50 years of hard luck. The Portland Trail Blazers.
I could have guessed that.
This team has been doomed since Hall of Famer Bill Walton's foot injury of 1978, especially when it comes to the draft. I mean, they selected Sam Bowie over Michael Jordan, and whereas they could have had Kevin Durant, they drafted Greg Oden, whose knee problems made him one of sports' all-time draft busts. Sure, they put together several impressive runs, including appearances in the 1990 and 92 finals, but they kept running into buzzsaws, including the Bad Boys Pistons, Jordan's Bulls, a Spurs dynasty in the making, a Golden State dynasty of its own, and those ever so lucky 2000 Lakers. Don't get me started on that fourth quarter officiating in Game 7. Our second runner-up is a team rife with boneheaded front office leadership, the Los Angeles Clippers. They've been in LA for about 40 years and have yet to advance to the finals, while the Lakers have 9 titles and countless Hall of Famers in that span. Beginning as the Buffalo Braves, they traded away Hall of Famers Moses Malone, Bob McAdoo, and Adrian Dantley before or during their primes. They gambled on Bill Walton and watched him miss 3 full seasons with more injuries. A racist nutjob named Donald Sterling bought the team and, against the will of the NBA, relocated the Clips from San Diego to La La Land. From that point up until his lifetime league ban in 2014, the franchise had the worst record in all of pro sports. So what's the most cursed NBA franchise today? Well, nothing hurts more than repeatedly being the bridesmaid and never the bride. No one knows that better than the Phoenix Suns. They're the lone NBA team to advance to 3 finals and never win. They had it on a platter in 2021, up 2-0 on Giannis and the Bucks. With a tied series, they blew a 60...
One of them Phoenix Suns is just one of them teams that you just really like. Like they always have players that I like, and they're just a team that I quite like.
But the deadest team in the NBA has got to be the Clippers, hasn't it?
The deadest team.
Yeah, when you think about it, they're in LA, right? So the major city.
It's hard when you've got the Lakers in the same city.
You've got the Lakers in the shadow of the Lakers, but they're just dead, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're just like one, probably like...
Do you know? No, Lob City Clippers though. That was the best time.
Yeah, but it's just a dead team. I wouldn't even know anyone that would follow the Clippers.
Yeah.
15-point first quarter lead in Game 5 and choked away a halftime lead in the deciding Game 6. But there's much more that goes into this one, and it's not just Chris Paul. Case in point, Exhibit A, Steve Kerr, the Suns general manager from 2004 to 2010 and architect of perennial heartbreak. This team was sizzling with a core of Amare Stoudemire, Sean Marion, and 2-time MVP Steve Nash. If they could get past the Spurs in the 2007 conference semifinals, then they would have had a clear path to the championship. But merely weeks after they fell to San Antonio, a federal investigation revealed that one of the series officials, Tim Donaghy, had been betting on games he worked. Donaghy claimed that he was influenced by officiating supervisor Tommy Nunez's dislike for Suns owner Rob Sarver, alleging that Nunez was always pointing out in the tape sessions of things to call against Phoenix and things not to concentrate on against San Antonio. Phoenix had more agonizing series defeats under Steve Kerr's management, from Duncan's late 3 in Game 1 of 2008 to Ron Artest's 2010 Game 5 winner. But the real death blow came in 2009 during the NBA draft. The Suns believed they were about to trade away Stoudemire to the Warriors for a blockbuster package that included the 7th overall pick. But when the Warriors saw who was sliding down the draft board, Steph Curry, they backed out. 5 years later, Kerr joined Steph in Oakland, and later that season, a dynasty was born. We can keep piling on the Suns, from the Kardashians and Landry Shamet curses, and let's not forget the innumerable incidents of lewd and misogynistic conduct from now former owner Rob Sarver. Good grief, man. The Phoenix Suns are the most cursed franchise in the NBA today.
No, I found a team who's more deader than the LA
It's
Clippers.
crazy to think that 12...
What?
Just thinking about it.
The Phoenix Suns?
No. Charlotte Hornets.
Charlotte Hornets is pretty dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
What were they before? The Bobcats?
I don't know, but they're 2 teams that you look at and go like, nah.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, even if they made it to the NBA Finals, you're like,
I'm
nah,
sorry if there's any Hornets fans or Clippers fans watching. Jesus.
32 teams have still yet to win one of the 57 Super Bowls. 4 of those teams haven't even been to the big game. And while we could factor in the older NFL championships, really, how many of us were
What's the deadest NFL team you
100
could...
of the 4 had not been to the
Texans?
Super Bowl. Texans won't have been, because they used to be the Houston Oilers.
Yeah, Houston Texans.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
I
But
guess-
when you think of an NFL, like, dead team in the NFL, who do you think of?
Tennessee Titans.
That's true. I know. I would probably say the
I
Texans.
think it used to be the Houston Oilers. I think they moved to be the Tennessee Titans.
What about the Texans then?
Houston Texans is a new franchise. When I say new, you know, when I lived in the USA, it was they were called the Houston Oilers.
Yeah.
And they changed, and every year when we lived in Houston, every year when they used to play each other, we used to do a big barbecue and a tailgate outside the
really?
the Houston.
What about the
Texans
Jacksonville Jaguars?
ground. No, I like them because I like the colour.
I like them
Yeah.
because I like Trevor Lawrence as well.
Yeah,
So.
but it's just the I think the deadest team's got to be like Tennessee Titans,
Yeah,
right?
we'll find out. Yeah.
watching football back then. Right off the hop, there are two teams who before the Super Bowl era were highly successful, but since then, they have largely been incompetent, irrelevant, and cursed as f***. The first I'll talk about is the Detroit Lions. Yeah. They dominated the 1950s, but cut their success short by trading Hall of Fame quarterback Bobby Lane to the Steelers. Lane claimed, quote, "I tried what they," I'm assuming the media or maybe fans, referred to as a hex, one that declared that they wouldn't win for 50 years. Well, for one, they've won just one playoff game since then. And second, exactly 50 years after the trade, they became the first NFL team to go winless in a 16-game season. Wow. To top it off, they've lost some of their most skilled players to early retirement, including running back Billy Sims, the best RB in my life, Barry Sanders, and the dominating Megatron, Calvin Johnson. At least the Lions have had some superstars over the past couple of decades, whereas the Cleveland Browns don't have too much to boast about since the days of Jim Brown. Cleveland has had several opportunities to get to a Super Bowl, but fumbled them away in dubious fashion. There was the red right 88 interception of the 1980 divisional round, then John Elway's iconic 98-yard drive in '86, and the fumble against Denver the following year. The curse really showed its teeth in the 90s when Art Modell ditched Cleveland for Baltimore. The Ravens won 2 Super Bowls with some of the greatest defenses ever assembled. Among the AFC North Division, the Steelers won 2 of their 6 titles since then, and at least the hapless Bengals have been to 1 in that span. As for the Browns, I mean, just look at all their starting QBs the past 20+ years. It's filled with draft busts from Tim Couch to Brady Quinn to Johnny Manziel to Baker Mayfield, and fans are still scratching their heads over signing RG3 and Deshaun Watson. No wonder they joined the Lions with an 0-16 season of their own. So what's worse than that? How about a franchise that gets oh so very close every decade and finds the most spectacular way to pull the rug out from under itself?
Is it the Vikings?
Team, the Minnesota Vikings.
I was gonna say that like recently the Bills have been the best in the league and they always kind of fumble it late on.
See, when he's talking about the Minnesota Vikings, I used to watch them play when I think it was Randy Moss who used to play, and
I thought the Vikings were quite good,
and they were good, man. They were really good in them days. So I don't know
have they got like? I know they got a play that I like there as well, like Justin Jets Jefferson, I think it is.
Yeah.
Baller.
The Vikings squandered their Purple People Eaters defense as they were outscored 95-34 across their 4 Super Bowl appearances. They haven't made it back to the big game since '76, despite several prime opportunities. They thought they'd get there in '89 when they pulled off the biggest trade in NFL history and what became one of the biggest curses in sports, the Herschel Walker deal. The Cowboys ultimately used the acquired draft picks to select Emmitt Smith and Darren Woodson. Dallas won 3 Super Bowls in the '90s, whereas the Vikings blew maybe their best opportunity to win one yet. You see, sliding all the way down to 21st in the '98 draft was Randy Moss. With the Super Freak, the Vikings produced the NFL's highest scoring offense up until that point, but with a chance at a Super Bowl riding on the leg of Gary Anderson, well, as Urinating Tree once said, Vikings gonna Vikings.
39 yards away.
They're the Spurs, aren't they, of the NFL then?
Yeah. That 38-yarder was the lone field goal that Anderson missed all year. Then came a 41-0 shellacking in the 2000 Conference Championship against the Giants, the tragic loss of tackle Corey Stringer the next year, the Love Boat scandal of '05, and then the most unlikely of alliances. In '09, Minnesota brought aboard their franchise's longtime nemesis, Brett Favre. He led the team back to the conference title against the Saints, but 1, he took a pummeling, and 2, he saved maybe his most infamous playoff interception for what could have been the game-winning drive. It was later discovered that the Saints were placing bounties on Favre and other league players in the infamous Bounty Gate scandal. The hits kept on coming the next decade, from drafting Christian Ponder, to the Metrodome collapsing, to Adrian Peterson winning Father of the Year, to Blair Walsh's 27-yard shank at the bank that would have sent the Vikings to the divisional round. It seemed that maybe all would be forgiven 2 years later, when Minnesota put together maybe its best season since '98, clinching a conference championship berth with a miracle that I had the fortune of seeing in person. The Vikings were 1 win away from hosting a Super Bowl in their own stadium. All they had to do was shut down Nick Foles and the Eagles on the road. They marched downfield on their first possession to take a 7-0 lead. But then, the horrors of conference championships past were unleashed on the team of destiny. Those same Eagles won Super Bowl 52 at US Bank Stadium. How does a franchise boasting a legendary defense, Fran Tarkenton, Chris Carter, Randy Moss, John Randall, Adrian Peterson, and now Justin Jefferson fail to win 1 Super Bowl and for nearly 50 years now even get to one?
Wow.
Meanwhile, their next-door neighbor, the Packers, have 4 Lombardi trophies to caress. No coin flip needed here, folks. The Minnesota Vikings are the most cursed NFL franchise today.
Just press pause, right? You talk about like neighbours, like you got like talking before about the Clippers and the Lakers, and then we talk about like the Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings and all. He's now worse growing up, supporting a team where the other team is so successful.
When you say neighbours, it's not like they're like City and United when they're like 20 minutes down the road.
They are because they're like closest NFL teams. So they are in the same vicinity.
But it's not like I doubt like Minnesota hate Green Bay and Green Bay hate Minnesota.
I bet they do.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, but I grew up in
probably
school.
like a 3-hour drive.
But I grew up in school supporting City when everyone was a United fan.
Yeah,
and United were winning everything.
It's still kind of the same for me now. To be, I know it's not like in terms of winning, but most of my mates are United.
Yeah, but it's easier for you because City are winning stuff.
Yeah, true.
Mate, we were shit.
Yeah,
we were like we never won anything. We got to a final in '81, right? And I was like 8 or 9, right? And that was the only thing we could get excited about. And then we didn't see anything then until 2008, 2011, sorry. So you think about the time.
Yeah, FA Cup.
Yeah, the FA Cup in 2011.
And that was against United.
And that was it wasn't, it was against Stoke.
But we beat in the semi-finals.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying, it's hard growing up with the neighbour who's just constantly successful. Yeah. And now like you say, the shoe's turned now, and I've got my time comes, but most of my mates are dead. I can't get back at them. Anyway, go on.
Some of baseball's biggest curses have been lifted over the past 20 years or so, but today there are still 6 franchises looking to break their World Series drought. For one, the San Diego Padres have to be on this list, not just because the franchise is cursed, but San Diego is cursed. It's mind-boggling that a team featuring the greatest pure hitter of that era...
That can't be a thing. San Diego's cursed. Do you reckon that's why that guy got the Clippers away from San Diego and put them into Los Angeles?
Good call. Could have been. Yeah. I don't know, but who do you reckon the deadest baseball team is?
That's something I really couldn't tell you.
Yeah. But San Diego Padres, I mean, they had Tony Gwynn, I guess, but I don't know. I don't think San Diego Padres would sound like fall into that. Probably someone like...
I genuinely couldn't tell you. Because what about the A's, the Athletics?
Yeah, Oakland. Anaheim, are they?
Oakland A's, isn't it?
Someone said they're in Anaheim. Don't know what they call it. Are they called the Los Angeles A's? Or Oakland A's? Oakland A's.
I thought.
But they've got Shohei Ohtani now.
He's on the Angels.
Oh, Angels, that's who I'm thinking of. I thought you're talking about the A's, right? The one with the A on the cap.
The Athletics.
Right.
Yeah. In green.
Yeah.
Closer in National League history, Trevor Hoffman, never won a ring. Playoff appearances have been a rarity, as the team played in just one NLCS their first 29 years. They won 4 division championships with Bruce Bochy at the helm, but unfortunately, Jake Peavy couldn't pitch every game for them. Flash forward after 13 more lackluster campaigns. In 2010, the Padres were dominating the NL West with a 6.5 game lead, but they went a horrific 14-23 down the stretch, and in their last game were shut out by the division winner, the Giants, and their manager, none other than Bruce Bochy. Since then, 3 World Series for the Giants, 1 World Series, and perennial dominance for their biggest rival, the Dodgers. As much of a failure as the A's and Angels have been more recently, the Padres really are California's red-headed stepchild. I guess that would make the Texas Rangers the black sheep.
Oh, yes. What a hit!
This curse all started in Washington, D.C., when owner Bob Short decided to move the team to Texas, much to the ire of fans. Yeah. The new crop of supporters would have to wait 23 years for a playoff berth, and to their misfortune, the Rangers kept running into the dynasty Yankees. They finally slayed the Dragon in 2010, defeating New York in the ALCS for their first ever World Series appearance, but they were no match against the same flame-throwing Giants from earlier. To their credit, they returned to the Fall Classic next year, in Game 6 leading 7-5 in the bottom of the 9th with 2 outs. They were 1 strike away from tasting glory, until David Freese, within mere inches, was able to tie things up. The next inning, the Cardinals were down to their final strike again, until Lance Berkman came through with maybe the biggest hit of his lengthy career. And then leading off the home half of the 11th, the 9th inning hero Freese sent the series to Game 7. The Cards prevailed for the final World Series in Tony La Russa's Hall of Fame career. It might seem impossible to find another MLB franchise with even more heartbreak, but this last club embodies the word itself, the Cleveland Indians, or today's Cleveland Guardians. It's been over 75 years since their last World Series, and you won't believe what they've endured since then. The curse may have originated in 1958, when GM Frank Lane fired new manager Bobby Bragan. Legend has it that upon his exit, Bragan walked out to second base at Cleveland Municipal Stadium and placed a curse on the tribe. although he denied it. Not even 2 years later, Lane traded away Rocky Colavito to the Tigers after he had led the AL with 42 home runs. The Indians spiraled into both irrelevance and infamy, failing to finish within 11 games of first place for a 33-year stretch. They traded away Tommy John in '65, and all he did was go on to win 286 more games. 9 years later, with serious attendance problems, they hosted 10-cent beer night and witnessed hundreds of fans rioting on the field mid-game.
10-cent beer night? Mate,
I'm there ordering the Cleveland Indians at the time.
Loads.
Have you not seen it? The video?
No.
You've got to watch it. It's brilliant.
What is it?
They did 10-cent beer night and everyone just piled in. People were just not even paying. They were all just coming in and everyone was drinking. And you know what's going to happen? 10-cent beer night.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Imagine having that at our stadiums. 10 pence beer.
It would be a bit crazy, wouldn't it?
That's what happened there.
Yeah.
We'll watch the video on it. It's a video. It's good.
Then in '87, they made their own mark on the Sports Illustrated cover curse by losing 101 games. And lastly, in '93, they tragically lost Steve Olin, Tim Cruz, and nearly Bob Ojeda in a boating accident. The Tribe got back in business from there on. They were on pace for maybe their best season in 40 years, but then the '94 strike happened. 1 year later, they rebounded with their first World Series appearance in 51 years, taking on the Atlanta Braves, but they were shut out in Game 6 to preserve the curse. Just like the Rangers, they quickly got a shot at redemption, facing the Marlins in the '97 series, and with 2 outs left in Game 7, were on the doorstep of greatness. Craig Counsell's sac fly extended the game to extra innings, and just like with the Rangers 13 years later, the Tribe fell victim to one Edgar Renteria.
A liner off Nagy's glove into center field. The Florida Marlins have won the World Series.
10 years later, the Indians had another deep run in them, taking a 3-1 series lead against Terry Francona's Red Sox in the ALCS. But Boston outscored Cleveland in the next 3 games 30-5. In 2013, Cleveland hired Francona to be their next skipper. In his 4th season, his club steamrolled the Red Sox in the ALDS and shut down a potent Blue Jays offense. All that was left was a curse versus curse World Series, the 68-year curse of the Indians versus the 108-year curse of the Chicago Cubs. Cleveland's hurlers continued their postseason dominance, holding the Cubbies to just 7 runs in the first 4 games. The Indians were 1 win away from ending decades upon decades of misery. Trevor Bauer didn't get enough run support in Game 5, and Josh Tomlin was rattled early in Game 6 to force the series-deciding Game 7 at the Jake. Trailing 6-3 in the top of the 8th, the Tribe rallied with the help of Rajai Davis's 2-run blast off Aroldis Chapman. Following a scoreless 9th, the game would need a brief rain delay to be decided.
I saw one of them recently.
What, a rain delay?
Yeah.
At the cricket?
No, it was like a video on baseball, and the guy got stuck underneath it.
Really?
Like he tripped up and got stuck underneath, but they kept going, so he was just in the middle underneath the thing. It's funny.
Massive 10.
Yeah.
Following a scoreless
He got
9th,
stuck, like,
the
you
game
can
would
see
need a
some
brief
guy
rain
almost
delay
get
to be
stuck there,
decided.
like he kind of got stuck
Following
like
2
that,
Cubs
and
runs
then went
in the
under.
top of the 10th, the Indians fell just a little short of the ultimate redemption, instead blowing a 3-1 series lead against what was the most cursed team in North America. This degree of pain is par for the course with Cleveland sports, but it stands out among 29 other MLB clubs. The once Indians, now Cleveland Guardians, are the most cursed franchise in the majors today. Now to my sport.
Who do you think the Denny's baseball team is? I'm thinking the Colorado Rockies.
I was going to say, when it came up with honourable mentions, I couldn't even tell you where the Rockies are located.
It's Colorado, isn't it? They call the Colorado Rockies?
I'm not even sure, but it sounds right now you say it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It sounds right in my head.
Yeah, it does. I forgot what I was going to say.
Just never heard about them, do you?
No.
You hear about all the teams, you just like say, yeah, okay, yeah. But Colorado Rockies, you're like, who?
Yeah, literally.
Sport, hockey. And don't forget that we have a separate YouTube channel that's all about that. 11 of the NHL's 32 teams have yet to win the Stanley Cup, and 5 of them have yet to advance to the final. For our 2 runners-up, we look back to when they both entered the NHL in 1970, the Vancouver Canucks and the Buffalo Sabres. Right out the gate, they shared a common thread stemming from the 1970 draft lottery, when the Canucks believed that they had won the first overall pick. Instead, it went to the Sabres, and they used it on Hall of Famer Gilbert Perreault. To their credit, the Canucks went on a couple of unprecedented runs, including the 1982 final, and they nearly pulled off a huge upset in '89 against the would-be champion Calgary Flames. 5 years later, they were back in the final, forcing Game 7 versus Mark Messier's New York Rangers, if only Nathan Lafayette's game-tying bid didn't hit the post. The Canucks tried to get over the hump 3 years later by signing Messier and trading away Captain Canuck, Trevor Linden. But they found themselves either blowing series leads or participating in some of the worst abuse the game has ever seen. Vancouver re-emerged in the early 2010s with Hall of Famers Henrik and Daniel Sedin. In 2011, they stormed their way into the final against the Boston Bruins, but after blowing a 2-0 series lead, including an embarrassing 4-0 loss in Game 7, the so-called fans burned the city to the ground.
Watch this, I remember this.
Since then, they've won just 2 playoff series. But you know who hasn't won a single series in that time because they haven't even been to the playoffs since then? The Buffalo Sabres. Buffalo actually succeeded early on, reaching the final in just their 5th year. But their championship run may have been thwarted when Jim Lorentz bludgeoned a bat that was flying around Memorial Auditorium in the infamous Fog game. The Flyers won the series in 6. Following years of futility, the Sabres were reborn with the likes of Pat LaFontaine, Alexander McGillney, and perhaps the most talented goaltender of all time, Dominik Hasek.
Yeah.
In '99, they made it back to the final, squaring off against the Dallas Stars. Hasek's former teammate Ed Belfour surrendered just 9 goals over 6 games. And in that series-deciding Game 6, Brett Hull would live on in Sabres infamy with this triple overtime tally. Coach Lindy Ruff and the Buffalo faithful thought Hull had illegally scored as his skate was in the crease while the puck wasn't. But since Hull had possession of the puck throughout the play, the call on the ice was correct. Flash forward to 2011 when Terry Pegula bought the Sabres and pledged, starting today, the Buffalo Sabres' reason for existence will be to win a Stanley Cup. What followed was a seemingly never-ending playoff drought, filled with catastrophically abysmal contracts. More pain arrived when they lost the 2015 draft lottery for a chance to recruit Connor McDavid. As for their consolation prize, Jack Eichel, well, the Sabres refused to permit an artificial disc replacement procedure and sent him packing to the Vegas Golden Knights, where in his first full season and first playoffs appearance, he was among the brightest of stars. But there's one more NHL franchise whose curse rears its ugly head just about every year these days.
The Maple Leafs.
And even though they have the second most championships, they have largely been irrelevant since the league expanded from a whopping 6 teams. Of course, I'm talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, while there was the curse,
I was going to say, because when I think of the NHL, they're probably the first team that would come to mind as like the best ever team.
See, when I think of like top teams in the NFL, in the NHL, I always think of the Detroit Red Wings. Because when I lived in the USA, they dominated. Big time.
It's either all the Boston Bruins.
Yeah.
But they would be the two
to my mind,
New Jersey Devils. Yeah, but they're like, if you're gonna say who, someone said, who's like
the most successful.
The most successful NHL team, I would 100% say the Toronto Maple Leafs and like the Boston Bruins.
I don't know who the most. I'm thinking if someone said to me who's the most successful NHL team, my guess would have to be someone like the Edmonton Oilers.
Really?
I'd guess a Canadian team.
Do you want me to see if I could find out
the
the
most
most successful?
that is.
I would say the Boston Bruins because he said they're second, so I'm not going to go with that.
I'm going with Edmonton Oilers as the most successful.
Most successful NHL team, yeah.
Yeah. Who is it?
I've got a top 10 here. In number 10, the New Jersey Devils.
Top 10.
Number 9, the New York Islanders. Number 8, New York Rangers. 7, Pittsburgh Penguins. 6, Edmonton Oilers.
Oh, 6.
5, Chicago Blackhawks. 4, Boston Bruins.
Right, let's think about this then. It's got to be a
3.
It's got to be a West Coast team, hasn't it?
3, Detroit Red Wings. Number 2, the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Oh.
That's what you said it was number 2, so I knew that was going to be number 2. But
is it Vancouver?
It's another Canadian team.
Vancouver Canucks.
Think about what I said. It's a Canadian team.
No, Vancouver's in Canada.
No, I know, but think about what I said.
Oh, the Canadians.
Yeah.
Yeah, Montreal.
Montreal Canadiens, apparently.
Are they still Montreal, though? I think they moved, haven't they, to Washington? Aren't they Washington? Aren't they Washington, D.C. now? Something like that.
I think it was Montreal.
I don't know why I think that.
I think it's still the Montreal Canadiens.
Oh, it is? For some reason, I thought they moved to... Maybe I'm thinking of something else.
It is,
I thought they moved, yeah.
Barocco back in '51, that was lifted just 11 years later, so we're going to skip ahead to 1967. The Leafs had just won their 13th Stanley Cup in the final year of the original 6 era. That offseason, defenseman Larry Hillman claimed to have put a curse on the franchise after being fined $2,400 for a contract holdout. But the true curse doesn't originate in hockey, but rather baseball. Years before Toronto's NHL club took on the Maple Leafs moniker, there was a historic Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team. Not only did they carry the Maple Leafs name, but they also sported the same blue and white colors. The NHL Maple Leafs were planning to buy the baseball team, but because Chairman Harold Ballard didn't want to make repairs to the stadium, the NHL club backed out. The baseball team relocated to Kentucky under new ownership, completing their sale that same year in October of '67. 5 years later, Ballard became Toronto's notorious principal owner.
Oh.
That same year, he was convicted on 47 of 49 tax evasion and fraud charges, including embezzling $82,000 from arena revenues to remodel his home. He showed little loyalty to his best players.
I'm surprised the Maple Leafs got so many votes,
using the media to imply that Keon would never get a loony more from him. And even after Keon's contract expired, Ballard blocked other teams from signing him. Or how about when he wanted to trade Hall of Famer and Leafs all-time leading scorer Darryl Sittler, who had a no-trade clause in his contract. Instead, Ballard traded Sittler's friend, Hall of Famer Lanny McDonald, who won a cup in the final year of his career. We also can't forget when Ballard fired longtime timekeeper Ace Bailey, who served the role for 46 years after his NHL career was cut short by a brutal shot from Bruins defenseman Eddie Shore that put him in a coma. There are countless accounts of Harold Ballard, and even though he's long passed away, his musk still stinks up Maple Leaf Gardens. As his son, who like his siblings was cut out of his father's inheritance, once recounted, "My dad once told me that he would run the club from his grave, and that's what he's doing." The curse persisted even without Ballard's corporeal form. A year after his passing, there was the missed high stick on Wayne Gretzky in overtime of Game 6 in the '93 conference final. Whereas he should have been in the penalty box, Gretzky forced a Game 7 a minute later with this momentum-crushing goal. A decade later would mark the start of a lengthy 19-year drought without winning a playoff series. Oh boy, where to begin with this one? In 2013, in Game 7 against the Bruins...
Did they say 19-year drought without a playoff win?
Yeah.
That's crazy. That is... Maybe they are the most cursed team.
A 4-1 third period lead vanished and
The
fell
Senators,
in overtime.
I've never even heard of them.
In 2018, Nazem Kadri took an egregious charging penalty that warranted a 3-game suspension.
Is that what it was? The Jets?
It's the Jets, isn't it? I don't know where they're from. I've not heard of the ice hockey team called Jets.
2018, Nazem Kadri took an egregious charging penalty that this one. In 2013, in games...
The Jets, you're right.
Panthers, Carolina Panthers, isn't it?
No, it's the Florida.
Florida Panthers, yeah.
The Sharks, it's
San Jose.
San Jose.
Senators, Washington, Jets. They're the deadest ice hockey team.
Yeah.
7 against the
Let us know.
They let a 4-1 third period lead vanish and fell in overtime. In 2018, Nazem Kadri took an egregious charging penalty that warranted a 3-game suspension. The Leafs once again fell in 7 games to the Bruins. 2019 was deja vu. Kadri goes after Jake DeBrusk in Game 2 and gets suspended, but this time for the rest of the series. The Leafs fell to, you guessed it, the Bruins in 7 games. The next year in the regular season, 42-year-old emergency backup goaltender David Ayers saved 8 of 10 shots for the Carolina Hurricanes at Scotiabank Arena. Where'd this guy come from? Turns out he was none other than the Zamboni driver of the Maple Leafs minor league affiliate, the Toronto Marlies.
What?
How does it get any worse? Maybe we can point to the playoffs the next year when Toronto blew a 3-1 series lead against an inferior Canadiens roster. And then last year, they lost their 10th consecutive opportunity to win a playoff series, falling at home against the Tampa Bay Lightning in 7 games. Toronto finally got over the hump this year against Tampa, but they unceremoniously bowed out to the Florida Panthers in the next round. Those 13 cups sure don't mean anything to most fans these days, as most of them have yet to even see their team get close to another one. The Toronto Maple Leafs are the most cursed franchise in the NHL today. So who do you think are the most cursed teams in sports? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Of course, there were only so many teams that I could include on this list. I did snub quite a few out there, especially for basketball.
Yeah, it's
that was good. That's a great video he's put together.
That is. He's given us the most cursed team of every
sport in the USA.
Really, hasn't he? But
or North America, yeah.
Does that narrow it down to one most cursed team then, do you reckon?
Sounds like the Maple Leafs to me.
In recent time, because if you're like one of the best, like biggest franchises, because they are. Yeah. And if you're not winning every year, it's a bit of a curse.
What was his name? Ballard, something like that. Ballard.
Not sure.
The owner of the Maple Leafs there. Yeah. He looked a right character, didn't he? Yeah, we've had one of them at City with Peter Swales, proper character, but he looks twice the man. Yeah, I enjoyed that. That was a good video. That.
Yeah, I think out of the Maple Leafs, the Indians, who was it here? It didn't say it was the Vikings that won it. Yeah, and the NBA it was the
Clippers. There's a few, weren't they, on there?
The Clippers and the.
Hornets was a mention.
Well, that was just us saying that.
Anyway,
the Portland Trailblazers.
Yeah, Portland Trailblazers. That's right. Yeah, but I enjoyed that video. It was good. Well done. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Yeah, let us know what you think as well. If there are any other Curse teams we missed, let us know about that Boston Curse as well. Tell me what it was. Yeah, we'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.